Sweet corn is an important vegetable crop in the Northeast. Freshly picked, locally grown sweet corn is popular among consumers who like to be able to buy it at roadside stands, farmers markets, and supermarkets. To grow a marketable crop of sweet corn, farmers must provide adequate soil fertility, control insect pests, and manage weeds. In this video, farmers describe production practices that they use to grow a good crop of corn without excessive use of fertilizers, insecticides, or herbicides. These ecological production practices can help enhance profits while protecting natural resources. Farmers can decide for themselves which of these practices make sense for their operation.
I'm Alex MacLennan, and I farm in the Connecticut River Valley in Windsor, Vermont, on sandy silt loam soils. I grow about 50 acres of vegetables. That's about 20 acres in sweet corn, 20 acres in pumpkins, and about 10 acres of green beans. I started using hairy vetch, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago now. Basically, I was looking for something. I don't have animals, I don't have manure, so I've been trying to find cover crops that fit in well with a fairly intensive vegetable production so that we don't wear out the soil. I like the vetch for a source of nitrogen because I'm looking for something with a bit of a time release to it, as opposed to just throwing on urea and having it go into solution too quickly. I also use the vetch specifically because I don't take land out of production for an entire growing season. So I'm trying to have a cover crop on the land basically all the time, that there's not a cash crop on there. I seed vetch from 15 to 30 pounds to the acre. The 30-pound rate gives a real nice stand, but some years the vetch seed is very expensive, and sometimes I just economize by cutting back to a rate as low as 15 pounds. I still get a reasonably good stand with 15 pounds to the acre. That is seeded at the same time as the oats, which is usually at about a bushel to the acre, and that seems to work out well for giving me a fall cover. We inoculate the vetch seed to make sure that we get good nodulation, because the whole purpose really of the hairy vetch cover crop is to get nitrogen fixation. We turn the vetch under in preparation for planting, usually around the 2nd to 3rd week of May. I like to hold off as long as I possibly can and get as much nitrogen out of the vetch as I can before I plow it under. Hairy vetch has never been a problem in volunteer production or weed production. We never had any problem turning it under and killing it very easily without any chemical use. So the vetch gives me additional biomass, a little bit better soil structure, additional nitrogen, and erosion protection for the winter and early spring. The major drawback to using vetch has been the cost of the seed, but as long as it stays under $2 a pound, I intend to continue to use it, and I think it's done a great job on my soils.
I'm Tom Harlow, Kestrel Farm, Westminster, Vermont. We have 50 acres of vegetables here, and we're doing about 15 to 20 acres of sweet corn. Our primary market for the sweet corn is local retail at a roadside stand that we have. As far as crop rotation goes, we usually start with corn or squash in a field, then we move on to greens, and then to a root crop in the 3rd year. Being an organic farm, we generally use a lot of compost, about 20 yards per acre, on everything except root crops. And then we use winter rye and vetch as a cover crop on everything every year. Our primary cover crop here is rye, which we use at 100 pounds per acre. I try to substitute 10 to 20 pounds of that rye seed with vetch seed to make a total of 100 pounds per acre cover crop seed. Cover crops are generally tilled in fairly early for some early vegetables, but for corn and squash, we like to wait until mid-May to let the rye and the vetch mature as much as possible. After using a moldboard plow, we generally apply about 20 yards per acre compost, and then we disc harrow 2 or 3 times, and then we're ready to plant. We do soil tests here every year on every field, and we amend our soils with compost, and we use some blended fertilizer through the planters. Being an organic farmer, we rely heavily on our cover crops and our compost to provide us with the nutrients that we need so that we don't have to make huge purchases of blended fertilizers. We make our own compost here on the farm. We have manure here that's trucked in, raw manure, trucked in from a local dairy farm. Best stuff we get is mixed with a lot of straw, dumped in a windrow. We turn it every 2 or 3 weeks with a bucket loader. Gives us excellent compost the way it is.
My name is Chris Anderson, Anderson Farms in Wethersfield, Connecticut. We raise approximately 100 acres of sweet corn. We have a total of 150 acres. We sell 20% of that on our own retail stand, and the other 80% is sold custom grown for other roadside stands and orchards throughout the state. In the last 10 years here at Anderson Farms, we've tried to improve our procedures and our growing efficiency. We follow the June nitrate testing to both save the environment and to defray some of the costs of fertilizer. And we also use a heat monitor to measure heat degree days for when to plant corn. What we've purchased is a ground temperature heat monitor. At the end of this wire there's a probe that actually sends the temperature up to the monitor. What that allows us to do is keeps track of the soil temperature high and low on a daily basis. So we can find out that the high soil temperature today was 77.7, and the low temperature this morning was 52.4. Push the reset button and come back tomorrow. What this enables us to do is we could determine the number of heat units that it takes for a piece of corn to break ground. And in order that we have a continuous volume of corn to sell, we try to plant enough so that we can pick an acre of corn a day in the summer. With the use of the temperature monitor, we're able to calculate how many heat units before we plant the next piece. And at this time we use between 50 and 60 heat units before we plant our next field, our next piece of corn. When the weather is warm like it is today, we generated, I'll figure it out real quick, you take the high temperature, ground temperature that is, and the low temperature, and you add it up, 130.1. Subtract 100 and you have 30, and you divide that by 2, so we had 15 heat units today. We've had a total of 53 heat units since the last time that we planted. So tomorrow we'll plant our next piece of corn. When the temperature is extremely warm, we might plant every 3 or 4 days. When it's really cold early in the season, we might plant every 10 or 12 days. We've developed a program so we can plant what we need to plant, we pick what we need to pick, and very rarely do we have a lot of extra corn left over that we have to harrow up. The cost of the monitor is about $700, but it doesn't take too many acres of corn harrowed up to pay for the monitor. Saved us a lot. The June nitrate test is a test that measures how much nitrogen is left in the soil and how much nitrogen is needed to be side dressed so the plant can grow completely to when it's harvested. By using this nitrate test, we can actually pretty much pinpoint exactly how much more nitrogen, if any, is needed in the soil, and we can side dress accordingly. We come in when the corn is about 12 inches high or so and take a soil sample 12 inches deep, probably 6 or 7 actual samples per acre. The university provides us with cloth bags, and it makes the sample gathering very easy. We send the samples to the University of Connecticut and get the results back within 24 to 48 hours by fax. It's important that we get the test back so quickly because if there's a nitrogen deficiency, we can go in and put the side dress it immediately. We try to keep very thorough records so that we can keep real good track of what's actually happening on each of the fields, each of the plantings. We've probably cut our fertilizer cost in half, I would say, since we've started the June nitrate testing.
I'm Jeff Bober. Our farm is Blossoming Acres in Southwick, Massachusetts. We are a retail operation with a farm stand. We do some farmers markets. We grow 40 acres of vegetables, 20 of them being sweet corn. Being a retail operation, we're always looking for different ideas to extend the season. One of the ideas that we've come up with is using row covers to start the season a little bit earlier. When we use the row covers for the sweet corn, we find that we can get anywhere from a 1 week to a 2 week jump on the season for when we start picking. We prefer to use a 45-foot wide by 1,000-foot roll for our spacing of rows, and in order to roll it out properly, we use 3 to 4 employees. On a non-windy day, I can apply it by just having them roll it out and hold it down. On a windy day, I have to use shovels to bury a little bit so that I can come through with the Farmall Cub and bury it all the edges in order to seal out the wind. On the Cub, we've taken off our regular cultivating tines and we've put on a hilling disc to throw the dirt over onto the cover in order to seal it properly. When we apply the row cover, we like to leave it loose in order to allow for growth of the corn for later on in the season. The covers, once we've applied them, we like to leave them on as long as possible. One year we left the row covers on to the point of pre-tassel and saved ourselves 1 or 2 sprays for corn borer. As far as weeds go, the herbicide takes care of most of them. Unfortunately, if it doesn't, by the time we're taking the row covers off, it's do or die. You live with what you have. When it comes time to take the row covers off, what we have found is I usually get a crew of probably 5 or 6 employees. We straddle the different rows and we just roll it up by hand, carefully trying not to snap off the tops of the corn. Once we've rolled it up, we put it back in the truck, take it back to the farm, store it in the barn out of sunlight in order to get more than one use out of it. In the past, I've been able to get as many as 3 years out of a piece of row cover. It costs around $700 an acre to put the row covers down. The benefit is customers coming to your store a little bit earlier than possibly somebody else's store, and hopefully you can keep them for the season long.
I'm Sandy Williams, Williams Farm in Deerfield, Massachusetts. We're located in the Connecticut River Valley. raise 200 acres of sweet corn, and we also raise about 10 acres of pumpkins and squash. We sell 98% of our crop wholesale. We rotate with a neighboring grower because it's, you know, when you're raising 200 acres of sweet corn, it's hard to rotate on your own farm and still raise that many acres. So we're in with another farmer. He goes on with potatoes for 2 years, and then I go on with corn for up to no more than 4, and then it's back to potatoes again. I try and scout as much as I can. I'll usually take a walk through the field and I'll pull 10 tassels and check those 10 and see how much corn borer infestation I have. And then I'll do another 10, and then I like to do anywhere around 100 tassels when I do a scouting of a good size block. It takes me about an hour to do 100 plants, and then from there I figure out my percentage. If I get over 15% infestation of corn borer, then I spray. This is a Powell sprayer that we use for control of European corn borer and the control of earworm on our farm. Right here is set up right now with a drop with a set of nozzles here and a nozzle over the row and so forth down on each row. And if you can see, there's a nozzle. Each row has 2 nozzles, one on each side, and that's what we use for the control of European corn borer. The nozzles that we use are a hollow cone nozzle. We used to have fan nozzles, and I don't know, the droplets were a little bigger, and I think we were getting a lot more runoff on the ground and stuff, so we went to these. Gives you a finer mist, finer pattern, plus it goes out in a cone. We usually try and put on around either 30 to 40 gallons of water to the acre. We put out spray cards. When we use these spray cards for coverage, we just clip them on the plant with a clothespin or whatever, so they'd stay on the plant. Every little drop that hits the card will leave a little dot, so you can see what kind of coverage you're really getting. If we did not spray the corn for corn borer, the general public does not like bugs. I mean, they won't buy the corn. And then, I mean, I don't know, I think, if you get a 35 or 40% loss in your ears, you'd be out of business in no time, because that's, you can't sell that kind of stuff. I would like a 95% saleable product to the public. Some years you don't have to spray if you don't have any pressure, but most of the time you do.
I am Gordon Bemis. I run Hutchings Farm in Concord, Mass. with my brother John and farm manager Bruce Bickford. We grow approximately 50 acres of crops, mixed vegetables, berries, and apples. The vegetables and berries are certified organic. Our primary market is our retail farm stand. For that market, we grow approximately 5 to 8 acres of sweet corn. We rotate corn with our regular vegetables, never growing it more than once in 3 years in any given piece of land. In preparation for planting corn, some of our land will have been in vetch cover crop. We tend to use a moldboard plow and plow. At that point, we add our compost, which is composed of horse manure, mostly wood shavings, and chicken manure, which we bring in. We do not side dress. Cultivation starts when the corn is in spike with a Lely tine weeder. We usually make 2 to 3 applications of that until the corn is into maybe the 3rd leaf stage. We follow that with a Farmall H, which has Littleton type rolling cultivators in the front and shovels in the rear. That cultivator can either push soil in around the plant or pull it away, depending on the weed situation and the corn's growth. We will use that cultivator maybe 3 times, pushing quite a bit of soil into the row to cover the weeds. If we still have some weed problems, when the corn is 1 foot to 1.5 foot high, we will come in with a Farmall C that has discs mounted on the front, and we will push a lot of soil into the row, hilling it to cover the weeds. We do on occasion hand weed. Maybe each year we will hand weed as much as an acre. We have found that hand weeding is the most economical way to handle the large weeds rather than hoeing, and so it seems to be easier to pull the big weeds in one go through later when the corn is taller. In cultivating a given acre of corn, we tend to average 5 to 7 trips across the field. For costs, we're running between $100 and $150 an acre. If we add hand weeding to that, we are probably adding close to $100 in addition, which is okay considering that our corn is sold retail and we're able to maximize the dollars there. For insect control in the corn, we work hard to control first-generation European corn borer with BTs. We use a boom sprayer with just a nozzle that directs the spray down. That application is made by scouting the field when we first get tassel emerging to see what the stage of the European corn borer is. We will make usually 1 or 2 applications to get control. We do get adequate control, especially at first generation. We're very happy with the BT. When we apply it, we always use a spreader sticker. You really want to get the BT to be there so that the developing worm can consume it. We often try to apply it later in the day when there's less sunlight and wind, so that you'll gain an extra 12 hours before it starts to degrade in the sunlight. It's not always possible, but we do think that makes a difference.
I'm Jim Ward, and my brother Bob and I farm about 140 acres of diversified vegetables here in Sharon, Massachusetts. Our farm is called Ward's Berry Farm. We market our 45 acres of sweet corn through our farm stand with just a small little bit of wholesale. We've reduced herbicide use across the farm, and one of the only herbicide applications we still make is a banded reduced rate application of dual and atrazine over sweet corn. And we have the usual mix of weeds, broadleaf weeds and grasses. We do it post-emergent with crop oil, and we feel like we get really good control. This is the sprayer we use to spray all our sweet corn and a lot of other things, and we had been broadcasting atrazine and dual over all our corn acreage, but have a bunch of reasons why we want to reduce the amount of herbicide we use, so we've started to band it right over the row. We're setting up our sprayer for banding herbicides over the corn, and what I'm doing now is plugging every other nozzle. There's nozzles every 18 inches, our corn's every 3 feet. I'm trying to leave the nozzles over the rows. I'm plugging every other one with a little brass plug. I put the screen back in with the plug just so I know where it is. It's really simple as can be. I'm using an 80-degree flat fan nozzle, which is we use all over the farm for a bunch of applications, but it's really well suited for herbicide application. And I like to give it a little bit of an angle there, a little more than I normally give, so that I have a narrower fan when I'm spraying. We use it at about 50 psi, and we get not too much drift, and it has a nice pattern at that pressure. We like to hold it about 18 inches above the ground. This is a post-emergent application, and that can happen anywhere from 3 weeks after planting in the early part of the year to 10 days after planting when the soils are warmer. We like to get in before the broadleaf weeds are 1.5 inches tall. If we wait longer than that, you can not control some of those broadleaf weeds, but more importantly, you could also miss the grasses, which will be germinating. By the time the broadleaf weeds are 1.5 inches tall, you'll often have grasses germinating, and the metallochlor in the mix is not good at post-emergent control. So we need to get that on before the grasses germinate. Because we're going post-emergent, we need to use crop oil. So we use crop oil to break down the waxy cuticle of the leaf so that that post-emergent application can kill a broadleaf weed up to 1.5 inches tall. The corn is usually at this stage when we're applying the herbicides, this or a little bit smaller. And this is the usual mix of weeds that we're attacking. You can see lots of red root pigweed in here. There's some lamb's quarter, and we've also got yellow nutsedge. The pigweed and lamb's quarter and other broadleafs are well controlled by the atrazine. There'll be no trace of them in a few days after the application, but the yellow nutsedge will escape it all the time. And cultivation will take care of that enough so that we still get a good yield. Here you can see really good corn weed control. You can see that we've got good corn weed control in the aisles as well as in the row. That's because sometimes we're holding the boom a little bit high, and so we get spray material in those aisles, but we're not concerned about it drifting into the aisles. We are concerned about reducing the rate. There are a few reasons that we wanted to reduce the amount of herbicide that we use. The first is that we were asked to by the state because we're sitting on a big aquifer here, and it's known as Zone 2, an aquifer protection district. So in order to use these corn herbicides, we have to file a pesticide management plan. And this banding, I guess, started with us because of these pesticide management plans. We've been approved a few years in a row because we're reducing this amount of atrazine and dual by half of the lowest labeled rate. So that they seem to like that. We like it because it saves us money. We put half the material on per acre. It saves us time because we can now do 12 acres with this one spray tank as opposed to 6 before. And we don't have to worry about carryover of these herbicides affecting next year's germination. So we feel confident planting anything on this same ground next year.
I'm Chip Hardy at Brookdale Farm in Hollis, New Hampshire. I'm part of a family farming operation. We have about 200 acres of apples and small fruit and peaches, and we have about 160, 180 acres of vegetables, particularly about 110 acres of sweet corn. Of the sweet corn that we grow primarily for the wholesale market, and we only sell about 5% of that at our own roadside stand. We're at a location now where we have about 80 acres of sweet corn, and we have about 4 or 5 different soil types in this 80-acre tract. So each field is broken up into a 10-acre parcel, and we soil test each one of those 10 acres because there's a big variation. So by doing a soil test on each block, we can efficiently apply the amount of phosphorus and potassium to each 10-acre parcel because they vary so immensely. It really allows me to save some fertilizer costs by only applying what is needed for each block. The way that we get this information for these 10-acre parcels is we use 2 companies. They use global satellite positioning and take a soil sample on each 10-acre parcel within the same foot every year. After they do the soil testing, they present us with a soils map of each field, which analyzes and shows me what the nutrient value is and what needs to be applied for sweet corn production, how much phosphorus and potassium would be needed for maximum production. Nutrient management is very important in raising sweet corn. Soil testing for general phosphorus and potassium is very important. In the past, we didn't test as accurately for these 2 nutrients as we do today. We used to fertilize the fields all generally with one rate, But by using this new technology, we get better production than we used to, using less fertilizer. Well, this is our mixing and loading spray facility. We built this for a water quality safety issue. We keep all our chemicals right here in this facility, and we do all our mixing and loading of all our weed sprayers and orchard and vegetable sprayers right here in this facility. It's on a 2% pitch, and if you ever had a leak or spilt any spray material, it's all recycled and recaught into another container so that you can never pollute any groundwater. It all stays right in this spot. And the other beauty about having all the chemicals in one location, it really speeds up your mixing and loading operation. You don't have to go looking for chemicals in one barn or another. And having everything right here in one location under lock and key, it's much safer and a much more efficient system. We have the water right here. It's all gravity fed, so it doesn't take very long to fill the sprayer. The beauty of this facility is the fact that we can do all our pesticide mixing and loading right here, and there's no chance that we can have any spill. Everything is completely contained. If we even spill a few gallons, it's all contained, pumped back up and pumped right back into the sprayer. So there's no way that we can ever pollute any groundwater.
I'm Rich Moses. I'm from Eagle Bridge, New York, and we run this farm called Moses Farm. We farm currently about 90 acres, and 65 acres of that is sweet corn. We retail about 75% of our produce right here through our roadside stand. For the past 3 years, we've hired a consultant to do our pest management and do our scouting for us. We're spending several $1,000s a year to do this. Having a scout hasn't necessarily led to a decrease in expenses. In fact, maybe our expenses are going up slightly. But I do know that the timing of our sprays has been better. The results, the quality of the product we're putting out on the counter has improved. And we've discovered that we've found some problems early on that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise, and have addressed those problems accordingly.
I'm Dale Riggs. I'm a crop consultant here in Eastern New York. With sweet corn, what I provide for services is running pheromone traps for both corn borer and corn earworm, scouting services where I'm out in the field looking for what's actually in the field at the appropriate time. And then for most of the growers, I also make recommendations based on what I'm finding in the fields. I make sure the corn borer traps get put up in the proper location. That tends to be grassy areas. I try to not put them under trees, but in a nice open area where the moths are mating in the evenings. For corn earworm traps, they need to go in fresh silking corn, and I therefore need to move those traps every week so that they're always in fresh silking corn. When I know that corn borer is active, I go out and physically scout the field looking for the numbers of plants that are damaged, and then I give a % damage to the grower. When I go out and scout the field, I scout in either a V or an X or a W pattern so that I'm able to get a representative sample of what's actually out there in the field. What I'm looking for is, in general, about 15% of the plants having insects in them. That's what we would consider to be the threshold level, at which point it's then economical to go out and make an application to control these insects. With the corn earworm traps, I'm looking for actual numbers. I don't need to go out and scout the field, and I base my spray recommendations based on how many moths are in the trap on a weekly basis and the temperatures.
One of the things we've tried in the past couple of years has been the Trichogramma wasp, which is a very, very tiny wasp that's released into the field at the proper time. And when they hatch out, they seek out the egg mass of the European corn borer and will parasitize that egg mass so that the eggs do not hatch.
What I'm doing is weekly or twice a month releases of these Trichogramma wasps. And I just get these little cups that the wasps are in these as pupae. They emerge in the field and they crawl out through these little holes in this paper cup. I put them out in a diagonal or X pattern in the field, just simply tie this cup to the corn leaf. And then a couple days later, often within 1 day, the Trichogramma wasps will emerge out of these cups. Then they go searching for the egg masses of the European corn borer, lay their eggs in the egg masses, and they'll turn black if they're parasitized. They'll turn black in about 3 days, and then usually about 10 days after that, the new wasps will emerge out of these egg masses. The species of wasp we're using is called Trichogramma ostriniae. It's very effective against European corn borer in the field, so that's why we're using this species. This is experimental, but if this does work, if we're finding good results, there's potential for these wasps to be commercially produced.
We're a conventional farm in that we spray according to the threshold levels of certain insects in sweet corn. But the Trichogramma wasp has given us another tool to work with. We used a little bit last year and discovered we had some great results and decided to expand the use of it this year, hoping that in the long run we can eliminate some of our early sweet corn sprays for European corn borer.
Hi, I'm Jack Manix from Walker Farm in Dummerston, Vermont. We raise about 30 acres of vegetables organically. 10 to 12 acres of that is in sweet corn production. Through the season we plant corn about 7 or 8 times, 3 or 4 varieties each planting, and it's all sold retail through our farm stand. The corn earworm has been a difficult pest for us to control organically in sweet corn. We set up traps to monitor corn earworm populations that usually come from the west or from down south. And as soon as we start picking up 2 to 3 moths per week, we'll start using the Zea-Later that contains a mixture of BT and corn oil. And that's applied about 4 days after silk, or when the silk starts turning slightly brown. It's applied to the whorl of the silk and bleeds down the silk, and has been an effective method of killing the corn earworm. My daughter Kristen is going to demonstrate the Zea-Later. It consists of the canister, which holds 2 quarts of the BT mixture, and the Zea-Later is preset to emit 1/2 milliliter of the mixture into each ear, and that's enough generally for us to do 1/8 to 1/4 acre at a fill. The reason that we mix the corn oil with the BT is because the corn oil suffocates the larvae as it works its way down the silk, and the BT also helps to kill the larvae if it eats anything on the way. It's important to use a BT product that's labeled for sweet corn. The university has advised us that it's legal to use corn oil on a food crop. Right now we send out 1 person at a time who walks down the aisles and does 1 row at a time, comes back and does the row on the other side. If we get more guns, we'd like to send out more people, get the job done faster. On a block about 600 feet long by 100 feet wide, it's taken us 6 to 8 hours to go through. It's important for us to have clean corn at our stand. Even though we grow it organically, our customers don't like a little worm waving at you when you open up the tip. And so we strive to have 100% control. Realistically, with the Zea-Later and through our monitoring, we're getting anywhere from 90 to 95% control, even in a bad earworm year. And in order to make this whole thing work, we have to get a fair price. It has to be fair for us and fair for the customers. We have to be able to afford to do it. So we start off with a price that is pretty high in the beginning of the year, but we keep it there. and our customers seem to be willing to pay it if the quality is good and the flavor is there.